Hello and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Ruby. I'm a professional psychic medium, tarot reader, astrologer, and priestess. And in this video, I will be sharing my favorite tarot decks of 2024. So how this list works is out of all of the decks that came into my collection in the last year, these ones stood out as favorites. There was something very special about them. They added something unique to my collection, and I can see myself using all of these decks for years and years to come. Now, I will say it was really tricky to narrow this list down this year. There were so many very special decks that came into my life, and a few didn't make the cut simply because of timing. They came into my collection very recently, and I just didn't have enough time spent with them to feel like I could consider them an all-time favorite of the year. So I will need to share those decks in a future video. And I also want to say thank you to all of the viewers and clients and friends who recommended me decks or gifted me decks this year. There are so many decks that came into my life that I would have never known about or even really chosen for myself if a friend or a client hadn't reached out and either said, hey, I really think you should purchase this, or gifted it to me. So thank you to all of the clients that added and enriched to my tarot collection this year. I feel so blessed by you. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the list itself. I will say these are in no particular order besides the number one deck of the year, which will probably come as a surprise to no one, which I will share at the end. So the first deck on this list is actually a pairing of decks. I consider these decks to be sisters, and they are the Tarot of Persephone's Garden and the Tarot of the Huntress by Cura. These are indie decks. I purchased them at the deck creators Etsy. I believe the Etsy shop name is Chthonic Forest. I could be getting that wrong because their Instagram handle is slightly different than their Etsy shop name. So if I am incorrect in the name of the Etsy shop, I will put the correction down in the description box to this video. Now, like I said, these decks are sisters, but I couldn't imagine only having one of them. They're so unique to me while also being very complementary. So let's dive into these decks one by one. Tarot of Persephone's Garden is a Persephone-themed deck, and it includes pre-Raphaelite art for every card image. So both of these decks, the artwork is not original. It has been curated by the deck creator, and the deck creator has done an excellent job curating the artwork that is featured in the deck. It is perfect. So not only do I love the content and the art and the energy of these decks, but they feature my favorite cardstock, which is this more quilted matte cardstock. I feel that this holds up really well and is very easy for me to shuffle. I have some mobility issues, and these are very easy to shuffle and work with, which I really appreciate and is a consideration when I'm thinking about what are my favorite decks of the year. How easy it is for me to use and maneuver, definitely consideration. Now, this deck is absolutely stunning. I feel that it is a really useful tool as a connection point for deity work. So if you have a devotional practice to Persephone, this deck is amazing for that. I actually used this deck to channel messages from Mary Magdalene. So there was another deity that I really used in working with this deck. I also used this deck in personal readings and client readings, though it was very much more of a personal divinatory reader for me. Now, unfortunately, I am pretty certain that this edition of the deck is out of print. There may be a later edition still available for purchase, or this one may be out of print. If it is out of print, I still encourage you to keep this artist on your radar. Unfortunately, it seems that it's pretty commonplace now for decks to only be available for purchase for a limited amount of time, especially these indie runs. And so having the artist as someone that you're watching will help you be able to catch the next deck release, because I'm sure there's going to be more decks released by this artist, or I hope at least. I would love to see this series continue. Now, Tarot of the Huntress, I think I might have used even more than the Tarot of Persephone's Garden, which is a little surprising given that I don't have a big connection to Artemis. So just as the Tarot of Persephone's Garden is Persephone themed, the Tarot of the Huntress is a deck that is dedicated to Artemis. The back of the box says, Guardian of the Night, you stand so free, protector of the wild, of beast and tree. Blessed Huntress, grant us your clear sight to navigate through darkness into light. Now, this deck, I believe, is a little more varied in the artwork that is featured. There is some pre-Raphaelite artwork. For example, the Magician is renamed the Witch, and I believe that's a John William Waterhouse. But it's a little more varied in the artwork that is featured, and something I really enjoy about this deck is the aces of the minor arcana. All of the aces are animals. I also really enjoy the deviation in card titles. We have the Nymph of Earth here. And for me, this deck is a really potent tool, not just for deity work, but for any reading where you are tapping into where you could be more connected to empowerment and sovereignty. This deck feels like the wild feminine to me, and it is very much celebrating the feminine beauty found in strength, the feminine beauty found in independence, the feminine beauty found in wildness, you could say. So both decks, wonderful. Tarot of the Huntress, more likely it's available for purchase. Sometimes I work with these decks together, and I'm really glad I purchased both. When Tarot of the Huntress came out, I was like, do I really need it? I already have Tarot of Persephone's Garden, and yes, I really needed it. And it's, showed up as one of my favorites of the whole year, both of them. Now, the next deck on this list was gifted to me by a viewer and a friend, and this is one of those decks I probably wouldn't have purchased for myself, but now that it's in my collection, I'm like, oh, this deck is just so magical and unique and special, and I'm so glad that I have it. And it is the Sasura Baito Tarot by Stasia Burrington. This is also an independently produced deck, and it was packaged with so much care by the deck creator, which I really appreciate. And it's one of the reasons why I will always prefer purchasing indie and supporting the artist if I can. I've been having this issue where all of my Amazon packages that I purchase when I'm getting like a mainstream mass market deck that I can only really find on Amazon, they've been coming in damaged. Like I'll show you. This is the Lightworker Oracle. It's dinged up. And so I really appreciate the added care that comes with purchasing from a small business, purchasing from a local artist. Now, this deck is so unique. It is whimsical. It is adorable. And it's also a unique reader. That's the best way that I can say it. It's a really unique reader, and I feel that it's also a very intimate reader. So it comes with a small guidebook. I haven't spent much time with the guidebook. I love these card backings. The card quality is great, exceptional, no complaints. There's these beautiful gilded edges. Oh, it looks like my cards are funkily put back. So there's gilded edges, and the artwork feels like you are stepping into the narrative or the lore of another world. Now, I started using this deck for client work right out of the gate, like pretty much open the box. I had a couple of readings booked that day, and I was like, let's just kind of use it and play with it and see how it reads. And I found that this deck was really focused on the emotional body. And the card work themselves, the artwork itself, feels very intimate. It's very character focused and character based. I love this Justice card. And I know that I've shared this before, but to me, one of the markers of a great deck is a deck that expands your perception of the archetypes themselves. When I am purchasing a deck or when there's a new deck that's added in my life, I really appreciate when it can offer a fresh perspective or a fresh interpretation of the tarot archetypes. And I find that this deck does just that. I think this deck would be really well suited to storytelling, creative writing, narrative work. Like I have friends that use tarot for like putting together their D&D character, etc. I love this High Priestess. And this deck, because again, it's so character focused to me and intimate, and again, an emphasis on the emotional body. Like look at the Seven of Cups. That's what I mean about it feeling very character driven and intimate and emotional. I feel like this is a deck that you can use multi-purpose. I think it would also be a great shadow work deck and a great self-reflection tool. And before I move on to the next deck, this interpretation for the Eight of Cups is exactly what I'm talking about when I say a deck that offers a fresh perspective. I think that all of us, if we grew up with in the feminine experience, can relate to, getting over someone by cutting all of our hair off or cutting our own bangs. So this really unique take on moving on with this Eight of Cups card. It's just a really unique deck. I'm excited to continue to work with that. The side of the box says lust, lost, love, lore. And I feel that that is really accurate to some of the themes that come through with the artwork and the imagery and the feeling tone. Now, the next deck on the list is a mass market deck. It is still available for purchase, and it is the Witch Sister Tarot by Julia Jeffrey. I believe this deck came out like March of last year, and I think it was like an immediate favorite. I had so many friends that are tarot nerds that were raving about this deck. I made the shop that I was reading at order it like almost immediately from Llewellyn and got my hands on it as quickly as I could. And as I shared in another recent video, I think I've recently talked about this deck on the channel, I think in my video on the Morgan. To me, this deck really straddles the line between tarot and oracle. Now, out of all of the decks on this list, this deck by far has the best guidebook. The Cura small decks don't come with the guidebook. The Sasura Baito, I know I'm mispronouncing the name, I'm so sorry, has a guidebook I haven't really explored yet, if I'm going to be honest with you. I have spent a lot of time with the Witch Sister guidebook. And I think that if you want to get the most out of using this deck, this is a helpful tool, because many of the card definitions in the guidebook are not what I would really go to initially if I was just using my own understanding of the tarot card itself. So Julia Jeffrey really turns some of these card definitions on their head a little bit, where I don't think it's a total departure from the archetypal energy, but it's coming at it from a different vantage point, you could say. Now, similarly to the last deck on this list, and this is probably one of my favorite chariots ever, gorgeous, this deck has a very immersive worldview. a very clear narrative and is very character-based. So this deck features historical witches. It is based on, I believe, the Scottish region. So witchcraft and shamanic practices from Scotland. And I don't use this deck for client readings at all. And I don't use this deck for big divinatory spreads as of yet. How I have worked with it may change in the future. I use this deck more as a daily draw or draw a few cards and get into the guidebook and really reflect on the messages that are coming through. If you are a hedge witch, I think this is a good one to add to your collection. And if you are interested in Celtic shamanism or more of that Celtic druidic paganism, this would be a good match for you. It is so unique. There is nothing else like it in my collection. And I love the box. I love how it displays. All right. Now, last deck on this list is one that I have raved about again and again, and it is the Sistine Tarot by Rose Bay Tarot. Unfortunately, this deck is no longer available for purchase, which is so sad. I've talked about this deck at length, so I feel like there's nothing more that I can really say about it. I've talked about this deck so much, but let me get it out of the box and just show you a few cards, because why not? It's #1 deck on the list. There are so many reasons why I love this deck. I love the backings. I've used it so much, I have pretty much worn off the gilded edges. The artwork is stunning. The mashup of religious symbolism and pop culture iconography, stunning. The roses, there's something that's really like brat about this deck. She's girly pop, she's brat, she's sexy, she's very much in her own unique, vivacious energy. Look at the 7 of Wands as Princess Diana. I feel this deck is like the quintessential female experience. We have the House of God here. It's the Last Supper. The Tower card as the Last Supper with the roses and the Sacred Heart. It's just, this deck speaks to my soul. This deck is my soul. And I am going to use it until it disintegrates in my hands. This deck and I are lifelong besties, you could say, and I use it in almost every single client reading. I really only take a break from it to pull in another deck just for the hell of it. I love the addition of the extra zodiac cards and the extra theme cards. I feel like it brings a lot to my past life readings, and it's just great. It's my daily driver, and as I shared, I will use it until it disintegrates. Please bury me with it. Look at this King of Wands. You know, there's something very Baz Luhrmann about this deck. It feels like, you know, like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Like, it's just this mashup of something really fresh with something very classic. So that is the Sistine Tarot by Rose Bay Tarot. Very excited for any future deck offerings from this creator because they really knocked it out of the park with this one. So that is all. There is one more video coming up in this end of year review series. It will be the decks that I use most this year in my personal practice. There will definitely be a little bit of overlap between decks I've already shared in that list and then some new fresh decks as well. So I hope that you all are enjoying the end of the year, the holiday season, and I will see you around very soon.